Welcome to the Danny Carlson podcast, your resource for growing the business and mindset for a life of unrestricted freedom. Now here's your host, online marketing acrobat, Danny Carlson.
What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here, and we have a very interesting topic today, and we have just the man for the task. We have Mr. Rony Hay, and we are talking about virtual summits, and this has been interesting to me for a number of years. I've known about virtual summits for a while. I've spoken at virtual summits. I have attended virtual summits as a guest, and it's a really interesting business model and a really interesting way to grow an email list really fast. Rony, I believe, just told me it is like list building on steroids, which to me is very interesting. I don't know about you guys, but we're going to dive right into it here with Rony Hay because he's an expert on this stuff and has some very interesting experience. So welcome, Rony. How's it going over there?
Good, man. Glad to be here, Danny. Been watching your interviews for a while, so glad to be on the other end for once.
Awesome. Yeah, stoked to have you on here when you are the expert that I want to learn from. So let's start out. What is just a quick little overview of what exactly is an online summit for those who don't know?
Yeah, so an online summit is essentially taking a physical, the concept of a physical event and taking it online. From a digital marketing standpoint, what that looks like is essentially it's a bunch of recorded webinars packaged really nicely over 3 to 10 days. But the main selling point of it and why it's so powerful is because you can get people excited to attend an online conference just as you can do for a physical event. And then with some tech things, you can make it evergreen, and now it's in perpetuity, constantly bringing people in and building that anticipation and excitement for online virtual conference.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, right? Is that it's a virtual conference. Unlike a real conference, you can sell people the recordings of this conference. They can access it when they want through videos and stuff like that, instead of you have to show up exactly on this date, and if you can't make it, then too bad, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of how we got into the space. My buddy Eric, who started his company with a live event, he said, my first live event, I made 100K, but it also cost me 100K. And so he was like, okay, there's definitely a bottleneck here, and how can we get rid of the overhead? And we saw virtual summits as a natural, ascension of something better, an evolution of something better, as we can provide massive value and knowledge to the attendees, but without all the overhead.
And so, it's obvious what the attendees will get out of it, right? Like they're getting a lot of valuable speakers and valuable information from all the speakers. But what is the desired end result of hosting a summit if you're going to put one together yourself?
Yeah, so there's a few things that you can get out of hosting a summit for yourself. I think the biggest thing is clout, authority, and the most tangible thing is an email list. Because we've launched most of our events starting from zero. And we are making a marketing pivot point to work with people with lists now, but we just wanted to prove the concept and show people that, hey, you don't have to have anyone on your email list. One of our clients right now, he started from zero in the real estate space. And he's landed, we have the Century 21 CEO speaking on our summit. And someone actually, the site isn't even ready yet, and someone bought the recordings already. So it's just we're really on the cusp of something big with this particular niche. But yeah, man, so really being able to position yourself as an authority in the space for whatever upsell or offer you have on the back end. So for this particular client, he wants to have a mastermind on the back end. But we have a lot of clients come and launch an online course after this because they have hundreds of raving fans post-summit.
Yeah, and so you just immediately can build this massive email list when you have zero email list. That was one of the member questions from the Facebook group is how much of an email list should I have to start to plan my online summit? And you're saying zero, right? You don't need any email list to start this.
Yeah, and I think that's the most shocking part to people is, seeing this from the outside, especially when you see the finished product, you may think holy crap, they're an authority, they're bringing all these people together. But that's the whole point of the summit, is to become an authority by being the guide. You're not the expert, but you're the guide. But yeah, so you can literally start from zero email subscribers before you launch your own summit. And it's kind of like, the resource conversation. If you don't have time, then, or if you don't have money, you need time. So the email list, you are going to have to work for it. And so the outreach process in the beginning is a little tedious, but once you start landing that first A-list speaker, things start to snowball. And we have a whole framework of, get the first speaker so you can get the first 10. After you get the first 10, then we can start talking about sponsorship. And so now we have a system where, hopefully you aren't paying for the summit. So one, the content that's being produced is not yours. You're outsourcing it or interviewing other people. And then the ad dollars you get from leveraging the authority of people on the summit that also becomes your authority to get sponsorship dollars for ad spend. So now even the reach and exposure of your summit becomes completely paid for by the authority of everyone on it.
I love how this all kind of works together too, because this ties into my experience a little bit with podcasting. A lot of people, I think, are thinking in their brains like, why would people actually come onto my virtual summit? They don't know who I am. Like, why would they say yes to speak at this thing? But a very interesting thing happens with podcasting, and I'd assume the same with virtual summits, is there's a concept called ego bait. If you ask someone to be on your podcast, that's kind of pumping up their ego. They're like, that basically is you telling them, hey, you have some really interesting stuff to say, and I think that you'd be a really valuable speaker to tell your story, to tell your expertise on this. And a lot of people, they take that ego bait and they just go with it. They won't even look into how big of an audience you have. They don't even care anything about you. They're like, oh, this guy wants me to speak. That's awesome. That makes me feel really good. So I'm going to do it. And like, for example, I just started a brand new podcast, the Danny Carlson podcast, and there actually isn't even a single released episode of the podcast yet. But I ran into someone who gave me an intro to a pretty prolific author of this book that I read called Blue Fishing. And he gave me an intro to that guy, and he immediately agreed to be on my podcast without even knowing anything about me, from like a 2-second email intro from someone that I only have met twice. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the power of this ego bait thing, right? Like, even if no one knows who the heck you are, just asking them to be part of something like this has a certain magic to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, but in that particular situation, I would love to look into the relationship of that person and the referral. So I know that's a huge part of it as well. Because, right, the next summit we're doing is Agency Virtual Summit, helping agencies build out and scale and exit and all the things you want to do with an agency. And we already landed our first sponsorship deal from a referral when the site's not ready, all these things. So I think there is a level of significance that happens per role and per relationship. How we like to look at it, though, is we think that, one, you may not be able to get every speaker that you want, but I think enough speakers are in a position where they want the exposure, they want to build the authority, they have that need, and they see the value in you giving them a platform. And so all we try to do is just align the summit with the people who reach out to these values and see if we can work together. And it's usually pretty successful, whether it be either trying to get them as a speaker or trying to get them as a sponsor.
Yeah, and I'm really curious too, is once you have a speaker that is someone who is kind of famous or kind of prolific, do you then try to leverage that relationship to get introductions to their network and other people that would be valuable for your summit as well?
Yes, we do. It's very case by case, so we can kind of feel it out in the outreach process. Sometimes they love the idea and they just want to help as much as they can. But other times, like for this real estate summit, we have celebrities on there. And so they're very much so like, we'll do this interview, but that's all you're getting. And that's totally understandable. We reached out to people and they said, hey, I charge $25,000 for an hour, but I'd love to support it in other ways, so then we try to work the relationship there. So it's really case by case. And again, it goes back to the end user's values. And sometimes they just don't see the need for exposure right now. Or we've had someone say no, someone say yes, and then change their mind afterwards saying, okay, I don't think this is aligning with me. I don't want to build my personal brand anymore. But if we can, like if we get a no, we always try to pivot. Say, okay, well, you can't help us. Do you know someone who can? Or actually the better phrasing is, who do you know? Because that automatically places the emphasis that they know someone.
Yes, I love the way you're thinking with that. And I'm excited to dive into that process myself. And so you answered this kind of a little bit, but how much should I be willing to invest financially and time-wise to host this? Let's say that this is my first summit ever. I don't really know what I'm doing, and it's probably going to take me a little bit more time to figure out what I'm doing. And so like, how much money of my own money should I invest, and how much time should I be willing to invest?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to your goals on what do you want to get out of the summit? How many subscribers and attendees do you want for your summit? If you know, we usually estimate a $3 to $4 cost per lead. If you can get under, that's amazing. But with a conservative $3 cost per lead, you can kind of calculate how much you want for your launch budget from there. Okay, you want 1,000 people, then that's 3K in ad spend, right? So that's the starting point in terms of actually having your marketing budget figured out. In terms of time, so it is a complicated question because virtual summits are very complicated projects. So our system is a 90-day system from the date that your first page of the site is up, because our system is, you have your first one pager for the site, even though registrations aren't ready yet, but now you seem legitimate. So when you reach out to speakers and sponsors, now you have leverage and authority. So we say we are 90 days from the live version of that site. But we've done this repeatedly, and we've still gotten feedback that this process is very rigorous. So if we can do it in 3 months, I would say someone normally doing it would take them 6 months. Probably doing like 20 to 30 hours a week. It is definitely tough. The sales cycles are big, especially with sponsorships. I would say it's a 30 to 45 day sales cycle to close 90% of your speakers, and then probably double that for sponsorship deals. And that's not including the tech infrastructure. And what I love, but what I also hate about virtual summits is that they're so encompassing in terms of skill set. So you need to understand marketing, or at least have a team that does everything. So it's like, okay, do you have a designer? Can you develop the sites? Do you have a tech understanding in terms of integrations for like different marketing plugins, all these things? Can you write email copy? Can you write sales page copy? Virtual summits are so complex and comprehensive of projects. It takes a lot from one person. And so if you have a team behind you that's highly skilled, you can probably do this in the same amount of time as us, maybe even faster. But if you don't have the skill sets and you don't have the understanding as well of the market, I would assume it would take twice as long, so around 6 months.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a few of the little pieces of a virtual summit. Can you just give us an outline of the different pieces that you need to put together? You mentioned emails, like email sequences. You mentioned reaching out to people. So I'd imagine you need some kind of CRM system to keep track of who you've reached out to for sponsorships and speakers and stuff like that.
Yep.
And what are the other pieces that you need to put in place for a virtual summit?
Yeah, so you need email campaigns. You need a registration page. You need deadline funnels, or I guess another similar plugin as deadline funnels for the offer. And the offer we run is after someone registers, they have a 15-minute, actually back up. So the entire offer for the summit, like you mentioned, is to sell the recordings and a bunch of bonuses like templates or other actionable items, ideally from either you or the speaker, whoever the host is, or one of the other speakers. And we usually have 3 pricing tiers. So the first pricing tier is the first 15 minutes, which you would need to plug in like deadline funnels. And then we have a during the summit price, which is after the 15 minutes. And then we have a post summit price, which is kind of like a webinar replay. So we can get into the details of that, but essentially it's, let's say we have a 3-day summit. After day 3, we have a extra 4th day that's hidden to the public. That's essentially, you can access everything as an encore for 24 hours. And there's a special price for that as well. So deadline funnels is one. Let's see. So sites, deadline funnels, email campaigns, marketing tracking. We also like Hotjar. That really helped us on the last launch we did, which is a plugin that screen records user behaviors. It's a marketing plugin. And I think those are like all the required ones, I would say the big ones. There are other things that I think would help. Like we also have ManyChat on there, which I'm sure you'd be a huge proponent of, to answer FAQs and send out content for like promotions during the summit. So hey, day one is here. Like these are the speakers on the summit. Yeah, so those are the biggest chunks. But I would just say that each of those chunks has a lot that goes behind it. So for instance, like the outreach strategy. So you have 3 core groups to do outreach for. You have speakers, which are probably the easiest, sponsors, and then affiliates. And the sponsors and affiliates are the hardest. Sponsors are the hardest because one, you're trying to get money from them, and it's usually like tens of thousands of dollars. So there's a huge sales cycle there. The affiliates are really hard because usually the affiliates you're going after are pretty successful, and so they don't have time to allocate to this. So the follow-up process with that to make sure they actually follow through on their word and promote like they do is very risk from the host standpoint. So even though there's, I would say, like 5 to 7 pieces of a summit, each of them are incredibly vast.
And I'm interested, how do you personally keep track of all the different pieces in here? Do you use a specific CRM system to keep track of like who you reached out to, who you need to follow up with again, at which dates and everything like that?
Yeah, so we're pretty simple, man. We use spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets?
Yeah, we use spreadsheets.
Yeah,
for everything.
simple, but great tool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
A really powerful tool that we found some success with is BombBomb. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of it. Is that a CRM?
I think there may be a CRM functionality behind it, but essentially the main product is it allows you to screen record an email, and it streamlines that entire process. So for outreach, it's really nice. Like one of our clients, it was in the design space. She would send a video message to the said speaker, and she'd pull up like flashcards, just saying, "Hey, I'm Donna," and just like keep swapping them out. Super effective. We landed like all the A-list speakers we needed in that niche.
Interesting. I'm gonna make a little note to check that out for myself. BombBomb.
Yeah.
I always like messing around with cool new tools like that, which probably is not a good thing. It's a little bit shiny object syndrome, but I'm gonna check it out anyways.
Definitely, yeah. Just test it. Just test it. Because again, we tried it in the real estate space, almost no success, because the real estate space is extremely jaded from tools like that.
Yeah, no doubt. And you touched on this one a little bit here with Facebook ads, but other than Facebook ads, what are the other ways that you promote online summits? So
there's a ton of ways. We try to focus on the 80-20. So we see that as Facebook ads and affiliates. So we just brought on an affiliate manager for the last project, and she came in really late, like 2 weeks before the summit. But she still equated for 25% of our opt-ins, and I believe 25% of the revenue as well. The conversion rate on the affiliates list are usually 2 to 3x what the Facebook ads conversion rate is, which makes sense, right? Because you're promoting to warm traffic essentially. So that's super powerful. And we kind of came to this realization after talking to the affiliate manager. And it wasn't a virtual summit she promoted for, but it was for a online course. And so the conversation went like this. It was like, oh yeah, I helped do a $1.5 million launch with XYZ person. We're like, oh cool. So how much of that was affiliate? She's like, oh, 80% of that. And we're like, oh, all right, we're missing something. And again, she started planning like 6 months out. She was super extensive. She was like a master at what she does. So we were like, okay, like I think this is what we're missing. And I've seen it from other people in the space as well. We were seeing conversion numbers from just another person that launched their own summit. And yeah, they were like 15% conversion rates. And I just questioned, like, so how is this so high? He's like, oh, it's from all affiliate traffic. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, Facebook ads and affiliates where we have seen the most success.
Yeah, and maybe dive a little bit more into the affiliate world there. So just for people who don't know, that would be like other companies that already have an audience that would be promoting the summit to their audience, right? So depending on how much their audience trusts them is basically how well your summit would do and like how relevant it is to their audience. So obviously there's a very important process into choosing which affiliates to work with and hopefully getting the right affiliates to work with you. So maybe give us some tips on affiliates.
Yeah. First part's the framework, right? You got to set the foundation. How can you create an enticing offer that will be worth the affiliate's time? So part A of that is really simple. It's just creating the schedule. We like to promote 2 to 4 weeks out. And you usually want to have it fixed. So let's say there's 4 promotion dates. 14 days out, 7 days out, and then there's like 2 or 3 during the week of. And the reason you want to have it fixed is because you want everyone to push at the same time to be part of a contest, right? Where you incentivize like, okay, first place affiliate gets $1,000 cash bonus. And these are arbitrary numbers, but you want to incentivize them to do that. On the surface level, it's to incentivize them to do well and to make the contest fair, which is why you have time constraints. On an internal level, you want them to push a couple weeks out so you can create a lookalike audience in Facebook of all the people that they push. So essentially creating the framework ahead of time to make a very, very incentivizing and appealing offer so that a month or 2 in advance, you can reach out to them. You can start building this relationship, right? This is sales. And so the affiliates, just like the sponsorship sales cycle, is long, at least 2 months. And so when you can start nurturing that relationship before you ask them for anything, the sooner the better. So nurturing the relationship ahead of time, planting the seeds, getting into these Facebook groups, and then positioning the affiliate offer as a complete no-brainer. So that's like the middle part of actually making the ask. And then part 3, which is, again, this is why this is much deeper than what it seems, is actually curating the swipe copy, curating the tailored graphics to each affiliate. And after curating that is spoon feeding it to them each day because they're not going to do it. Like, they're really not going to do it. So on the day of, hey, can you please push this email out? Can you please post this graphic? The graphic is what we usually say when they say they don't have a list, right? We just don't give them a no. That's the main strategy. It's like, okay, you don't have a list? Here, we made some social graphics with your face in the center of all of this. So that's, I think, big picture. Set the framework, nurture the relationship, make the ask, and then create a follow-up strategy.
Yeah, I love the piece about putting the social graphic with their face in it, because that's a great example of ego bait right there. It makes them look really good. If they have a picture of their face with, hey, I am part of this event, and it's great social proof for them, they can post it on the social media. That's a great way to leverage ego bait right there.
100%. Yeah, everyone loves to promote themselves. And the other part that I forgot was when you're structuring your outreach strategy for affiliates, we do it in hot, warm, and cold, right? So hot is the easiest. Really, these are all your speakers. So after you've landed your speakers, it's usually a very, very easy pivot to say, hey, you're going to be on the summit anyways. Did you want to help expand the reach of the summit so more people see your session? That's kind of the ask, and it's usually a no-brainer. So those are the hot people. Warm are the intros, like you were mentioning earlier. If they say yes, great. Did you have anyone else that would love to promote? Or if they say no, still ask them that. And then the cold, this is where you go into asking other businesses and corporations or orgs if, either their target audience is the same, or it would just make sense for them to promote the same type of audience, same type of product to the audience. And so these may not be direct people. So for instance, some of our affiliates we're reaching out to now, they're not in digital marketing for real estate, which is our summit, but they have like CRM stuff. So we're asking them. We're having one for courses that teach realtor things, because they have audience sizes and they're realtors. And so you start going out to these companies that have no idea who you are, but would find some value in promoting this to their list, right? Because from their standpoint as well, they build authority and goodwill with their audience when they're promoting this free online event. And that's a huge selling point to them. It's just like, look, all you have to do is send an email and just saying, hey, this is free, sign up. And then you get commission off any sale that comes your way.
Well, it sounds to me the important thing really is framing your offer so that it is beneficial to them. It makes them look good. They have some financial benefit. Just framing it in a way that just gives most benefit to them, right?
100%. Yeah, we always start with, okay, what are their needs and how can we fit it? How can we make the summit fit it? Because again, because the summit does so many things, we just try to fit it into every single need.
Yeah, I love the way you're thinking with that. And so what are the biggest mistakes that you see people make with summits, or maybe mistakes that you've personally made or people that you know?
Yeah, so personally made, I think, is not having QA, tech QA beforehand soon enough. So, now something we do, because we had a summit where the day one came and, there's speaker session pages that were broken, all these things that were broken. And so now it's like, if we say day one is starting 9/6 at 8 a.m., it'll be live at 7:30 a.m. And then it's me or someone on the team are just going to be going through every single thing, running through the checklist, making sure everything is all right. So that's kind of like a finished product error. I think biggest errors are underestimating how much work it's going to be. I think that's the biggest thing. Because especially when you're starting off, to launch a virtual summit requires a ton of momentum. And so most people beat themselves up when they're just trying to get their first few speakers. It freaking sucks. But once they land that first speaker, it's just a complete snowball effect. And so that's with speakers. I would say for sponsors and affiliates, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's starting too late. Being so stuck with whatever you're doing, probably trying to land speakers and interviews, that you completely forget that you should be nurturing certain relationships to plant the seed for later. Again, because virtual summits take so long, you need to constantly be looking ahead and slowly just preparing and planning how to make your life easier when the time comes. And a lot of it is planting the seeds, reframing the summit, right? How it fits them and their values. So those are some huge errors. Let's see. Interviews, making sure you conduct good interviews. So that's a huge part of it. So prepping for that as well. Learning how to use a mic, getting a good quality mic, making sure the quality is consistent with each interview. So right now, we have a certain view on Zoom. If you're going to do this certain view on whatever screen share program you're using, make sure that's consistent throughout the summit. All these little things that what add up in the end if you've done it differently, right? So you want to create a consistent experience for the end user when they come to the summit, just like you would if you went to a live event, right? I think just biggest theme here is not seeing how massive this project is and letting things fall through the cracks.
I mean, that's super, super valuable advice right there, because my first inclination, I'm looking at hiring someone to help out with this, and my first inclination is I feel like I can do this. You know what I mean? I feel like this doesn't sound like that much work. I could probably just reach out to people in my network and kind of set up a few automations and blah, 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 and it would be okay. But I know that my brain has that tendency to overestimate my abilities to get things done. So that is very timely advice for someone like myself who's looking to get into this that does not necessarily have 20 hours a week for the next 6 months to make it happen. So appreciate that for sure.
You're pretty sharp and you have someone helping you, right? So let's cut it down to 3, but it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of work for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And so we have an audience question here from the Facebook group. So what is the best structure for a summit? So maybe, how would the summit speeches be structured? And then what kind of host attendee ratio would you shoot for? So I guess the question really is, in what structure are the speakers going to be speaking, and how many of the speakers are you going to have?
Yeah, so for structure on the speakers, we like to break things up into 2 different types of interviews. One is a normal Q&A, which is what we're doing right now. And the other is a presentation where they'll present slides and teach and talk about something. We usually do the presentation when it's something like a CRM or some type of SaaS where they want to get into the platform and share. But yeah, those are the 2. And of course, there are some hybrids too, where it's maybe they'll start off with an interview and then go into a screen share. But those are the 2 different frameworks behind the interviews that we've seen be the most successful. In terms of speakers to attendee ratio, I really don't think that matters. And I think that may be looking at summits incorrectly. So how we look at it is, how can you structure your summit to bring your end user through a transformation? So I'll give you the breakdown of our real estate summit, right? The initial plan was 3 days. First day was for new realtors that are struggling to sell more than one house per month. They've closed their first few deals, right? Second is they're mature realtors that are looking into maybe starting a team. And then the third day is real estate investing. And so we want to take them each day of the summit through a journey, right? And how something that's kind of meta beyond this is now whatever upsell you're planning in the future, you want to kind of position them to be ready for your upsell, right? So for our real estate one, we have an apartment syndication coaching program at the end of this. So that's why we're kind of leading them to level up to become real estate investors at the end of the summit. So how does that matter in terms of speakers? Well, when you can define your themes or your topics for the days like that, now getting speakers and figuring out how much is very easy, right? So it's like, okay, well, I know I can probably get around 20 speakers and I can fit X amount per day to fit these themes, if you will. And that's really how we position and structure how many speakers should be in each day. It's by the topic, and if those speakers in those days can really bring the end user through the transformation that we want them to go through.
I love the way they frame that too, because it's a virtual summit. It's not necessarily limited by a host to attendee ratio. It's no less valuable if there is 100 people per speaker or 1,000 people per speaker. You're not all sitting in an audience together where you're in a stadium or something like that if there's 100,000 people watching. It's more about the value that you can bring from your speakers and the journey that you can take them through. Absolutely love that. Well, Rony, this has been super, super valuable here. Especially for me, someone who's really looking into hosting summits, and certainly for people who are just getting started out and have no email list, I think a summit sounds like a great opportunity. Like, you can get started when you have no email list, you have no money, you can get the whole thing funded by sponsors and everything like that if you're working hard enough and going through that deal cycle. And it sounds to me like 6 months out, having something like this to completely launch from zero is a pretty appealing opportunity for people that are willing to put in the work. So Rony, thank you so much for coming on here. If people want to reach out to you, I guess people who are members of the Facebook group, Freedom Actualizers, then you can reach out to Rony there. But other than that, where can people learn more about what you do or reach out to you personally?
Yeah, man, Facebook's a great place. If you want to find out more about virtual summits, go to leadnextgen.com, LEAD, next, and then gen, GEN.com.
Awesome, man. And then before we leave here, any parting words for someone who is looking to get into a virtual summit? What parting words of advice would you give to that person?
I say do it. I think I would hope that some of what we shared on this on this conversation like scares you. But my favorite part about virtual summits, from like even me, who I'm the one like helping clients build the infrastructure and host their own, I grow so much from it, and the host grows so much from it too. And one of my favorite parts is you can't always define the results that will happen from the summit. So, you know, we had a crypto virtual summit that by the end of it, the host got poached to work at some billion-dollar crypto company as like, I don't know, CMO or something like that. The design one, she started creating these relationships with all these A-list speakers that she was watching when she was building her design agency, right? And this is like 2 weeks post-launch, so we don't even know the ripple effects of that. My buddy Eric, who launched his summit, he landed a bunch of speaking gigs, like 15 speaking gigs after his first summit. That was totally not in the plan. So yeah, like a lot of serendipity happens when you launch your summit, and it's gonna be tough, but you grow through pain and struggle. So yeah, let's do it.
I love that. If you want the easy life, then you shouldn't be listening to my podcast or to any of these videos. So just saying, guys. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us, and let us know what you think in the comments. Ask your questions, give us your feedback. I'd love to hear it. And until next time, guys, peace.
Thanks for joining us on the Danny Carlson podcast. For resources mentioned in this episode, visit dannycarlson.co.